Today on Sports Central, we'll be going over our first official full prediction, and it's going to be over the LSU Tigers. And yeah, of course, this is a team that was absolutely outstanding in the 2019 season. They won the national championship, as you all know. And yeah, honestly, I can't quite name a better team than what this LSU team was last season. I mean, if you look back over the past even couple decades, I mean, this LSU team had to have been, a top 3 team that we've seen over the past 20 years. And I definitely think, this LSU team, quite honestly, was one of the best that I've seen of all time. They had Joe Burrow being a great quarterback. Of course, he was the first overall draft pick, and quite honestly, he probably had one of, or if not the best season that a college quarterback has ever had. If you look at his stats, he put up nearly 6,000 yards, 60 touchdowns, 66 total touchdowns last season, and yeah, he just had an outstanding season. But nonetheless, we're going to be going over LSU's 2020 season here today. We're going to be going over every single game on their schedule, as well as an official prediction, official record prediction, and a full preview in the process. So with that, let's look at your season trends from 2019 for LSU. Of course, they were 15-0, won the national championship, so they were completely undefeated throughout the season. They were 8-0 between September and October, obviously, then 7-0 between November and the postseason. If you look at some of their key wins, they had a lot of great wins on here. They had very few close games. Their only close games really were their Auburn and Alabama games, of course. Those ones were within 5, but yeah, they beat up Florida pretty good by a couple of touchdowns, 42-28. That was their first really good win. And of course, they beat Texas earlier in the season too. But yeah, once again, you go back to the Auburn game. They played them at home. Big win there, 23-20. They also had a win at Alabama in Tuscaloosa, 46-41. Obviously, Alabama's been a tough one for LSU to beat in the past, so that was a huge win for them. And honestly, after that Alabama game, it was all up from there. They had a big win over Georgia in the SEC Championship, 37-10, and they also absolutely destroyed Oklahoma and Jalen Hurts in the College Football Playoff semifinal, 63-28. Oklahoma didn't even stand a chance against this outstanding LSU team. And they also had a big win once again in Clemson. They ended up beating them 42-25. So yeah, to be able to beat Clemson like they did in a national championship game, very, very impressive by LSU. Once again, this was an outstanding team, one of the best that I've at least ever seen. I'm sure they're probably one of the best teams of all time. Moving on to your returning production, your key points for LSU going into 2020. They do lose their Heisman winning quarterback and their first overall draft pick, Joe Burrow. Of course, everyone knows about this by now. He was an outstanding quarterback last season, definitely the best in the nation as far as college football goes. And yeah, he had nearly 6,000 total yards of offense last season. He had 5,600 passing yards, 60 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions, best pass completion rate in the entire FBS. And yeah, he also had 384 rushing yards to go along with that. So yeah, he was outstanding all around. For him to do what he did last season, I have to believe that Joe Burrow, quite honestly, had one of the best seasons that a quarterback has ever had. They did lose their top running back, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. You can't forget about him as well. He had an outstanding season, nearly 2,000 yards, as he sat right around 1,900 total yards with 17 touchdowns. And 453 of those yards are receiving. So yeah, he was great all around, and I think he's going to have a great NFL career coming up. They do return their second running back, Davis Prince. Tyrion Davis Prince is what I should say. And he had just right around 400 yards with 6 touchdowns last season. So yeah, it'll be good to return him. It looks like he might be right up there with one of their top running backs next season. They also returned their top wide receiver, Jamar Chase, which is a huge return. You can expect a ton out of him next season. I'm sure he'll be one of Miles Brendan's biggest targets for sure. He had just right around 1,800 yards with 20 touchdowns last season, so he was a big receiver for LSU. They also lose their second receiver, Justin Jefferson, which had just over 1,500 yards with 18 touchdowns last season. So yeah, that's going to be a tough loss there. Probably right up there with Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Joe Burrow for being a very tough loss. They do lose their third receiver, and Terrace Marshall, too. He had just right around 700 yards with 13 touchdowns last season. So they do return a couple of really good receivers with Jamar Chase and Terrace Marshall. And it's good that they also return their second running back and Tyrion Davis Prince. So yeah, watch out for that for sure. They do lose their tight end, Thaddeus Moss. He was a big part of this team too. You can't forget about him, as he had just right around 600 yards with 4 touchdowns last season. As far as the offensive line goes, they lose 2 on the offensive line. They lose 1 defensive end, as well as 2 linebackers and in the secondary too. So this defense does lose 5 starters overall, so you got to watch out for that. But honestly though, for LSU, their returning production looks pretty good. I do expect Miles Brendan to be a good quarterback. For him to be able to back up Joe Burrow and learn a lot from him, I think that's going to give him a lot of really good experience going into 2020. So I think Miles Brennan will be just fine in LSU. The big thing is for me is depending on how good he's able to do. But once again, I do expect this offense to be pretty good next season. I don't think it'll be just as good as it was last season, but I do expect it to be right up there with one of the best offenses, at least in the SEC. Can LSU make another run in 2020? I definitely believe that they will. I think they're going to be right up there with one of the best teams in the nation once again. I mean, even though they do lose their quarterback, Joe Burrow, of course. I mean, he was a great quarterback once again, outstanding player. But, I mean, I still think LSU definitely is a team. I mean, they've got enough talent, enough potential to be able to make another big run at another title. Odds of winning the SEC next season, though, I say they're pretty good for LSU. Of course, they got to get past Alabama. And I do expect Alabama to be really good next season with Mac Jones. And yeah, that offense, I definitely think that LSU is going to have a ton of competition next season to make it to that championship, but I do expect them to definitely be in the running to make that championship game next season. Moving on to your schedule now, and here's what we got for LSU. Of course, if you look at your projected records, the ESPN FPI is predicting a 9.6 to a 2.6 official record, and of course, once again, that does include your conference championship, so it's basically out of 13 games, but yeah, overall, I mean, if you look at that, once again, that's not all that bad for the ESPN FPI. The CBS is predicting a 9-3 record. Then Athlon is going a little bit higher than the other two with a 10-2 record for LSU this upcoming season. And I think these are very accurate, actually. I think definitely, I mean, this is a potentially 10-win team for sure. I mean, I don't think that they'll have any problem with that. So it was a little bit surprising to see ESPN CBS selling them a little bit short, going with more or less 9-3 win seasons. But yeah, nonetheless, as far as your schedule goes, you start off the season against UTSA on September 5th. You got Texas at home on the 12th. That's a huge game there. Very big impact on the season. Then you got Rice in a neutral location on the 19th. You got Ole Miss on the 26th. You got Nicholls to start off October, followed by Florida and Arkansas. That Florida game is going to be huge going into next season. Watch out for that one. Then you play Mississippi State on the 24th. You get a bye week. Then you play Alabama, another huge game. You got to watch out for that one. The good thing is for LSU, they do have that one in Death Valley at home, so you got to watch out for that for sure. They play South Carolina on the 14th, and they got two brutal road games to finish off the regular season at Auburn and then at Texas A&M. And here's what I'm expecting for your September. I'll give you 3 easy wins. Easy win basically means I think that LSU will win those games by at least 14 points, and those will be UTSA, Rice, and then Ole Miss. I think that Texas game is going to be tough. I mean, Sam Ehlinger, I think, is going to be the best quarterback in the Big 12 this upcoming season. So, yeah, you got to watch out for that Texas team. I think that LSU does slide in a win there. I think it's going to be very tough, though, less than 13 points. So, yeah, watch out for that. If it was in Texas, I'd be very, very concerned about that game. But it's not. It's in Death Valley, so that's very good for LSU. As far as your October goes, here's what I'm expecting. I'm going to have to give you a loss at Florida. Just with that being in the swamp and Florida being a team that I do expect to be very good this upcoming season. Unfortunately for LSU, I think that's going to be a loss. I mean, I considered all the momentum. I mean, if you get a good Texas win, and then you have 3 really good wins, 3 really good easy wins is what I should say, against Rice, Ole Miss, and Nicholls. I think for that Florida game, definitely, I mean, they're going to have a lot of momentum, but the thing is, though, is that Florida's going to have a ton of momentum, too. And with it being on the road, I mean, once again, I do expect Kyle Trask and Florida to be very, very good next season. Yeah, you got to watch out for that one for sure, and I think LSU does take a loss. That's going to be their first loss in a couple of seasons. You go on the road to Arkansas the next week. I think they bounce back and get a good win there. And then you have a tough one against Mississippi State. Of course, I don't expect a lot out of Mississippi State, but I just expect Mississippi State to really show up in that one. Once again, I mean, they got a pretty easy schedule for October. Moving on to your November, though, your November is absolutely brutal. I mean, you got Alabama once again. That is going to be a really tough one. Huge impact game there. And I think that you get a tough win there. I mean, I think the only reason why I'm picking LSU in that one, I mean, both teams look like they're just about even next season. I mean, they're both losing big quarterbacks going into 2020. And I do trust Mac Jones a little bit more than Miles Brennan, but I think that LSU being at home that one, I do expect LSU to get the win there against Alabama on November 7th. On the 14th, you got South Carolina. Big game there. I think you get a tough one. But you do get a win, and then you play Auburn on the road on the 21st. I think that one's going to be a loss. I mean, you're playing 3 really tough teams with between October 24th and the 14th of November, and I think that Auburn game is going to be really tough having to go on the road. Actually, I do believe you get a win, but I think that Texas A&M game is the one that you're going to lose. I mean, after having played 4 really tough opponents, I think that Texas A&M game is going to be pretty tough to finish off the rest of the season. So I do expect you to take a loss at Texas A&M, but I definitely think LSU, once again, a 10-2 record through your regular season, I think is definitely something very good. I mean, most companies are expecting a 9-win season out of LSU, and I do expect it to be better than that. Once again, I do expect a 10-2 record out of LSU. I think that this definitely is a team to watch out for, so definitely be watching out for LSU, especially in the SEC. I mean, but once again, that Alabama game, biggest game of the regular season by far for LSU. I mean, that Alabama team is definitely looking very good going into 2020. So, I mean, yeah, but this schedule was very tough to predict too. I mean, yeah, for the first one, I mean, wow, yeah, LSU's got a very tough schedule this upcoming season. I went back and forth on that Florida game a ton. I mean, that was a really tough one for me. Same with the Alabama game, but I mean, especially those last 2 games of the regular season with Auburn and Texas A&M being on the road, I definitely think that LSU will lose one of those. I'm not quite sure which one. I'm predicting Texas A&M because, I mean, you got Auburn the week before. But once again, I do expect them to lose one of those games. But that Alabama game, once again, watch out for that. That's going to be a huge game. But yeah, with that about wraps up our final prediction for LSU. Let me know your thoughts on this team in the comments below. Also, let me know your record predictions. If you enjoyed this preview, be sure to slap a like on it. Subscribe as well. It really helps out the channel, and I really appreciate that a ton. But yeah, once again, thank you guys all for watching. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central, and I'll see you all later.